now Ranking Member Paul for his comments.
Secretary Mayorkas, under your administration, the Biden administration, over 1 million people have been paroled. What is the criteria you use for paroling individuals?
Ranking Member Paul, the parole process is one that we execute according to the law. We make individualized determinations with respect to significant public benefit or an urgent humanitarian reason.
So for what reason was the alleged killer of Laken Riley, Jose Ibarra, paroled and allowed to come into this country?
Ranking Member Paul, first and foremost, all our hearts break for the family of Ms. Riley. Secondly, the perpetrator of this heinous criminal act needs to meet justice to the fullest extent of the law, and I will not comment on the particulars of the case because the matter is being prosecuted by authorities now.
This isn't on the case of whether or not he murdered her. This is on the case of why you paroled him. Why was he paroled?
My same answer, Ranking Member Paul.
You're refusing to answer the question?
I have provided my answer, Ranking Member Paul.
You're refusing to give any specifics about Jose Ibarra. Well, I have the documentation, and the document says that the subject, the person accused of killing Laken Riley, was paroled due to detention capacity. It was full. So is detention capacity statutorily allowed to be used as a reasoning for parole?
I'm sure you've heard the news. Senator Rand Paul and Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas locked horns in a heated debate over parole policies. In a recent congressional hearing, Senator Rand Paul grilled Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas about the Biden administration's parole practices. Paul questioned Mayorkas on why over 1 million individuals have been paroled, zeroing in on the case of Jose Ibarra, who is accused of murder. Paul pointed out documentation suggesting Ibarra was paroled due to detention capacity being full, a reason not listed in the legal criteria for parole. Mayorkas responded, stating parole is granted for urgent humanitarian reasons or significant public benefit, but he didn't comment on Ibarra's specific case, citing ongoing prosecution. The tension rose as Paul repeatedly asked if detention capacity is a lawful reason for parole. Mayorkas sidestepped, referring to his earlier statements on parole criteria. Paul criticized Mayorkas for avoiding the question and not clarifying Ibarra's parole specifics, arguing it contradicted previous testimonies about parole criteria.
Due to detention capacity, it was full. So is detention capacity statutorily allowed to be used as a reasoning for parole?
Allow me to assure you that individuals who pose a public safety threat or national security are our highest priority for detention. The reality, not just with respect to this administration, but every administration that precedes me, is that the number of encounters has exceeded the number of detention beds available.
The question is it statutorily, legally allowed to use the excuse that our camp is full? He was paroled due to detention capacity. Is that allowed under the law?
Ranking Member Paul, my prior answer stands.
Which means you're not going to answer the question. Are you pleading the Fifth Amendment?
No, Ranking Member Paul, I've answered the question.
Well, no, you haven't. The question is very specific. You have testified previously, and you have testified today that there are 2 reasons you can be paroled: urgent humanitarian need or significant public benefit. That's not the reason listed. The reason listed is parole due to detention capacity. Is parole due to detention capacity a lawful reason for paroling someone?
Ranking Member Paul, there are different bases for parole. I am not a legal expert in this regard, but let me assure you that when an individual is encountered at the border and they are deemed to be, at the time of encounter, a threat to public safety or national security, they are a priority for detention. If not, they receive a notice to appear and are placed in immigration enforcement proceedings. The number of individuals encountered at the border exceed the number of beds available in our detention facilities. That is not something specific to this administration. That is something that has been true.
You might have more beds if they remained in Mexico.